Welcome to the stage, host and executive producer of How to Citizen podcast and PBS's America Outdoors, Baratunde Thurston.
Hey, what's up? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hi, and welcome Thanasi Dilos, co-founder of Civics Unplugged. Come on out.
What's up?
What's up, Thanasi?
I'm doing great. I'm feeling good. These lights,
They're
right?
lighty.
Yeah.
They are lit.
Kind of glowing.
We have such a intimate group here, so I want to do something and just hear your names. We'll go row by row, starting with you. Go. Skippy. Geneva. Reggie. Tom. Max. Athena. Kathy. Pep. Elizabeth. All right. Constance. Britt. Jackie. Kara. Sophia. Sean. Peter. Mega. Thanasi's agents.
Get them out. Security.
Thank you. Thanasi's stalker.
Yeah.
Josh. Chad. Daniel. Cheyenne. Thank you all for being with us. Yes. So we've got Thanasi Stalker. We've got Constance.
And Athena. I remember the Greek name.
Athena. We got Reggie. We've got Skippy, who skipped us off. And some of you I know, I'm not going to play this game. I started something I can't finish. That's just what happened here. We're going to have an informal chat. We'll open it up if we feel collectively that makes sense. But we are here to agree that we should set our phones to silent mode. And that is how we create intergenerational consensus around how to self-govern. We're here to talk about relationships across generations, about how to create democratic institutions in our civics, also in our businesses, in our personal lives. And Thanasi, I want to start with you. First of all, age, please.
20.
20.
Yeah.
And I'm 45.
We don't need to do the game again with the age.
No.
We can hold it. We can hold the age.
So this is intergenerational right now.
Yeah, that would count.
Civics Unplugged. Can you describe what it is and kind of the different activities it does? Who is it for? What do you do?
Yeah, so Josh right there, my stalker, and I had a conversation when I was 16 about why every single effort to empower young people has kind of fallen short. And the reason that we came to was because that adults don't give agency and money and trust to young people. And so we were like, what if we did that? So Civics Unplugged is essentially our vehicle to train the next generation of leaders and give them a ton of money in every state to go build the next tech-powered solution for good, non-tech-powered solution for good, really whatever they want. And in 3 years, since 2020, since we launched it, we've worked with 3,500 fellows through a 6-month program and moved $500,000 to support youth-led work around the country. It's cool.
Some of you aren't clapping. You don't stand for the youth.
And our kids have done everything. Like, one launched a satellite into space recently. One is the UN Secretary General's climate advisor. So pretty much like really dope kids. And the only thing that we do differently is that we trust them with money and pair them with adults to work together.
That sounds really revolutionary. It sounds like you follow through on the things a lot of grown-ups say about wanting to pass the torch to the next generation, but you're actually doing it.
I mean, I think the question of passing the torch is one that Josh and I even had a conversation about, and we had a conversation about earlier. It's like, what is the torch that we are passing? It's, the past 20 years have seen a lot of attempts at social change. Some have worked, some haven't. But they've been led by a older generation, right? Older than me even, and then the folks younger than me have not been able to participate in that movement for change. And so do we really want to pass the torch and say, well, this is what older generations have built. You guys have to continue it. It's our idea that you have to continue. Or do we want to say, actually, we're going to tell you what worked, tell you what absolutely didn't, what sucked, what made us feel horrible in the social change space. And we're going to give you the space to be creative yourself. And we're going to trust that you're going to create a new torch. Maybe you'll create like a flashlight or something, right? But we don't think about it as, this is the movement, you continue it, you take all the stress. It's more about what you're doing.
Why I care so much about this, they didn't just randomly smash us together. I help run a podcast with my wife Elizabeth here called How to Citizen, where we take citizen as a verb. I'll be talking more about that at length tomorrow, but there's some principles undergirding that verb interpretation, that we show up and participate, we invest in relationships with ourselves, with others, and the planet around us, that we understand power, and that we value our collective self-interest, not just our individual self-interest. And when I was thinking about this torch passing thing, and you, Thanasi, had asked, like, what's the torch we want to pass and how? I think about the commencement address I got to give a year ago at my high school. It's a triumphant moment to return to your high school and just like tell people what to do with their lives. That's how you win high school. And then you could also lie about your reputation, how cool you were in high school, because they don't know. They're young, they're kids, it's amazing. You can just misinform them. But trust them with money and resources, it's true.
Yeah.
But also make them think I was great. Anyway, what I said to these folks was, don't trust the adults who tell you that this is all yours to deal with now. Right? When people say, what gives you faith? It's like the next generation will figure it out. It makes me feel a certain type of way. I know it's well intended, but I think if we don't kind of dive into that language, it's just a baton of unresolved mess that a previous generation created. You know, it's telling a kid to clean their room and their parents' room. And not giving them the resources to do so. So instead, it's of go fix the world. It's like, welcome to the world. We'll be right beside you. Sometimes we'll be behind you. Sometimes we'll be in front of you. But it's something we have to do together.
Yeah, and then on the other side, you have people like Dianne Feinstein who refuse to, get it. Like, there's a time where you trust kids, and there's a time that people say, okay, it's your job, and that's not the best solution. There's also the other side where it's like, I'm not letting any young people into this space, right? Congress, Maxwell Frost is the first Generation Z member to be elected to Congress. Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, it took so long. You know what I mean? And there's not many people following him yet because those pathways haven't been opened by older generations, and so. I don't have much experience being an older generation. And so, you are the most quotable person. So,
I love you. People older than me. Yeah, everyone's older than you.
Okay, all right. So, I don't know how to do it.
Yes.
You might. And so, like, this is a question that I've been struggling, and it's like, we can tell everybody about passing the torch all we want, and we can say that we have to, but how the fuck do we do it?
So there's a couple of examples that I've seen, or maybe a few I've been a part of. One that comes to mind is there's a recent guest on our podcast, Christian Vanizet. He's a French kid. He's not a child, but anyone younger than 30 is a kid to me. And he co-created this platform called Make Sense. It's a volunteer network powered by young people who want to do more in their communities. They're not satisfied just being seen as Instagram influencer wannabes. And during the pandemic, they took on this cause of creating community around elder housing blocks where folks were trapped and no one could visit them. And there was no infrastructure set up for a group of young people who wanted to help a group of old people. People were like, what? Who are you? What are you trying to do? What is this coming from? And they had to convince the managers of facilities to let them in and let them make phone calls. And so they baked cakes. They baked cakes and they brought these cakes to essentially bribe the staff, but also demonstrate their good intention. And they met with each other. So I think the example of this for me is a group of people who had energy that needed an outlet. They found each other in these peer-to-peer cells and defined some task, some obstacle that they wanted to try to clear. They worked with the existing community, which was a whole different generation, and they found a way in that was totally non-traditional, food. And then they created a program that, to this point, the French government has now implemented it. Right? Their volunteer program to bridge generations and provide company to people isolated in elder care is now an official thing that the French government endorses in the exact model of this non-governmental youth-led organization. We got hands from Reggie, right? That's really dope. There's a different example of how this bridging happens that I witnessed through this other project I'm a part of called America Outdoors. This is a PBS series that I host where
It's great, and you should all watch it. It's really good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
My agent, Thanasi Dilos. The focus of the show is people's connection with nature, and we travel and tell these stories. And a few weeks ago, I got to go to New Mexico, to the Diné Nation, Navajo Nation is sometimes known as, and I met a white man named Scotty who he was a newcomer to this community, and he had an idea, and he wanted to help. That's the beginning of a lot of bad movies. Right? With Coolio making music and everything. Because I'm from a different generation, so Coolio was a rapper.
Is he on TikTok? Or?
Sadly, no.
Man.
Sadly, no. But Scotty, saw this. The need was the Navajo reservation is tens of thousands of square miles. It's larger than 10 U.S. states. There's no bike shops. People donate bikes all the time because they want to help. And there's no bike shops. So they donate problems that people can't fix themselves. So Scotty said, I think we could create a bike shop. And he knew enough to not just be a total colonizing kind of force about it. And he worked with people who were there and got blessing. His wife actually worked as a midwife, so he lived on the reservation and saw a lot of things he might not have seen if he just came in totally from the outside. They took a venue called the Silver Stallion, which was a bar that had overserved this already traumatized community for generations. It had been shut down. And they rebranded it as this bike shop and coffee shop to create jobs and teach people how to fix their bikes. And they have this program where the kids are now running bike training workshops. They've got a mobile van. They call it Big Blue. And the learning that was happening both ways is what stood out to me. Scotty knows a lot about bikes. He was a competitive cyclist who can't do it anymore due to some injuries. He had knowledge and wisdom to share. But he also approached with humility, and he's like, this has to be by and for the Diné as well. How do I maintain my expertise and value while also ceding enough of the power to make this a collectively credible operation? And from what we saw there, he's pulled it off. They call him the colonizer. They gave him these jokes right around it. It's kind of like a Black Panther scene, but it's with love. It's with love. And his message, which kind of applies to that thread of hoarding power, but also abdicating totally, right? Let Greta solve climate. I'm going to do what I'm going to do. Or Dianne Feinstein it. He said the beauty of the bike is that I can't pedal it for them. Right? They choose their path as well. So I can't even tell them I can tell them where to go, but once they're on it, it's totally up to them. But I can give them skills and show them how to get back up and how to put that bike back together so that they can chart their own journey. And I was like, dude, we were just supposed to be talking about bikes, but now we're talking about everything. And that was these kids are 10, 11 years old. They made me follow them on Instagram, literally took my phone and like, follow me, they're the young guns. And they've got Scotty, who is 47 years old, and they're having this conversation across trauma, across physical activity, across race, and everybody's learning so much in that. That's an ideal intergenerational kind of citizening space.
Yeah, I mean, the 2 points I want to touch on are equality and humility. I think they go both ways, right? It's not just the adult that needs to be humble and learn from the kids and see the power, right? The young people in the space also need to recognize their lack of wisdom, their lack of experience, and be open to learning and sharing power too, right? Yeah. There's been a lot of youth movements that haven't been willing to allow adults to teach them. And because of that, we've ended up with a ton of siloed youth movements that have galvanized millions of people on social media, but have kind of failed to make structural change. And in the same way, we've had amazing adults who are doing great structural work, but haven't been able to engage thousands, hundreds of thousands of people on TikTok because they just don't have the skills. An example I want to bring up is this guy, Chase Hartman, who is a fellow at Civics Unplugged. And he tells a story about, he recycles books. That's his thing. He's in Florida. He's recycled like 400,000 or 500,000
books. A lot more books to recycle in Florida these days.
We actually...
Hey.
No, I love Florida.
We'll help you.
We're still there.
It's still in Florida. I hate to break it to you.
We are also still docked in Florida, so we gotta until we come out.
Touche.
Yeah. But he talks about like when he's worked with people in his school board, right? He has had to convince them of how to share power, but he's also had to kind of teach himself to be willing to work within the structures that they have created, right? There's a lot of young people who would be so happy to see everything torn down and be able to take the power and do it themselves. But then when they actually get like into budgeting or into the bureaucracy or into hiring or into administration, they're like, well, shit. Like, do we have a sales force?
No one ever rallies for administration.
Yeah, exactly. No one. And so,
what do we want? Quality CRMs. When do we want it? Now.
Yeah, and so it goes both ways. And what we started to do at Civics Unplugged is, like, Josh and I worked together. I was 16 and he was, I don't know how old you were at the time. I don't want to expose you. But you know, it was probably hard for both of us to be on meetings together, pitching foundations and like being equals, right? Because they would always see me as Josh's intern, or they would see Josh as someone who's like peddling this young person around to try and raise money.
We should be careful
one of them
with
is
the word
peddling. But like, so it's about reframing. It's about reframing a ton of context for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And what we've begun to do at Civics Unplugged is try to help other organizations build equal opportunities for young people and older generations to work together within the current way that organization operates, right? We're not asking for them to switch up and go like hire a bunch of young people and give them all the power and take your hands off. It's like you can take baby steps into it. And that's been really successful. A lot of organizations that we worked with had youth advisory councils.
Okay. Yaks.
Yaks, as we call them. And my question to them is like, okay, if you wanted to diversify your organization in another way, would you create an X advisory council and then continue making your organization look the way it is? Like if it was all people that look like me and I wanted to diversify my organization, I would just be like, oh, it's my diversity advisory council, and then everyone else was a white guy.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know if that's the solution. And when you look at generational diversity, whether it's young people or older generations, like people who are in their like encore of life, you need to involve them in equal ways and share, because everybody has wisdom to bring. And that doesn't sound like a revolutionary idea, because it's not, but it also isn't something that people adopt in their organizations very often.
So can you filter deeper into an example you've already shared or draw a different one? What does it actually look like? If it's not a youth advisory council, is it shadowing? Are people lurking in the Slack? Lurking is a word I also should be careful about. But what does it actually look like in operation?
It's definitely not hiring young people outright when they're in high school and giving them all the responsibilities of a full-time employee. It's about being very candid about the strengths of every generation. Young people, again, are not good at Salesforce. I'm not good at Salesforce.
No one's good at
Salesforce.
Everybody's pretending.
Yeah, but it's also about like giving them the ability to equitably participate in teams and in decision making where their strengths are most necessary, and being very honest about where they're not. Like at Civics Unplugged, we have fellows work with us all the time. We don't expect our fellows to keep the books or be on 9 to 5 like we are full time, but we also don't treat them like part-time interns who come in to just answer some questions. When they're there, when they're fully present, when they're fully briefed, they're equal members of the team.
Yeah.
And that's the difference. It's also about like giving them strong mentor figures that treat them equally. Like I feel like you have kind of adopted this in a bunch of different places, not even at Civics Unplugged, of just like talking to young people and being really entertained and enjoying the conversation and making them feel like they're adding value to you just like you're adding value to them.
Yeah, I pretend to do that all the time. No, it is important to do that. I'm actually thinking of, we've had a couple of rounds of Civics Unplugged people work with us on the podcast, and it's been educational. Elizabeth's done more of the direct management of that. But I think when you talked about strong mentorship, I was also hearing strong feedback and honest feedback too, and holding people to a standard, right? When you're here and you're present, this is what's expected. And like, yay, you're great, and here's how you can do better. Yep. And that's a sign of respect, that you know they can handle it, both the truth of it and also rise to the occasion, and that you expect that they're going to be able to kind of do the job you want them to do, in addition to being open to all the stuff that they're bringing that we don't know how to do. It's like, okay, but there are a few things that we know that you're trying to learn, so here's a learning moment, and so we can both exchange in that and not hold back, I think.
We had some fellows deliver like a how to work intergenerationally session for this other nonprofit organization that's pretty large.
Yeah.
And at the end, they pulled me and the fellow that was doing the Q&A to the side, and they were like, I have a question I don't want to ask in public, but I'm really scared of delivering feedback to young people because I don't want to get canceled. And this was like an older person. And that was real talk. They were being really honest. They were being candid. They were like, I don't want to say the wrong thing to this young person and A, put my job at risk, and B, put their future at risk. I don't want to destroy their confidence just because they like messed up on one thing. And I think that's kind of an excuse for not like being intentional and thoughtful about delivering feedback, because I think the best thing that you can do, again, is treat all generations like you would treat a normal full-time employee, like equally. You would give that feedback to a full-time employee, but you would also consider who that person is as an individual, and you deliver feedback in the way that they individually would receive it.
Yeah.
Maybe some people like it right then. Maybe some people want to wait till the end of the week to get their feedback, right? It's about being intentional about how you design your leadership. Why does that change when you're dealing with a young person? Why do you all of a sudden get scared because they're of a different generation? It's like this weird block that doesn't need to exist, that some people just still are afraid of.
You were 16 years old when you started working with Josh to build Civics Unplugged.
Yes.
Tell me about your household, your parents, your childhood. Who are you? Who are they?
Yeah. So my mom was a refugee from the Turkish invasion of Cyprus. She lived in Libya for a bit, and then she came to New York. Dad is from Greece. They met in Queens. I still live in Queens. But I was, 17 and 18 when we were building Civics Unplugged, I was truant a lot. And truant, yes.
As in not
going to school.
Okay.
And, making Josh look real good.
So you're hanging out with kids who don't go to school, huh?
Yeah.
Huh.
And
we're going to clean this up.
We're fine.
Great.
It's an intimate gathering.
Yes.
But before then, I was in and out of the hospital with really bad mental health issues. And so I have missed a collective probably third of my schooling experience. And I think that kind of life has shaped what Civics Unplugged is, at least why I care about it so much. So when I graduated high school barely in 2020, I chose not to go to college to continue building Civics Unplugged, because when I was in high school, I really felt that I had no way to find what I was passionate about. I had no way to give back to my community. I had no adults that trusted me. And there was a couple adults in my life who said that I was valuable and I did have a purpose and I could achieve that. And that was it was luck. I lived in New York City and I met someone cool that told me I was worth it, and that changed my entire life. And what's really unfair for a lot of young people, is that they don't have someone like that. They don't live in New York City. They don't get lucky and get introduced to someone who's willing to share power and like put them in big meeting rooms and kind of make their career. And so Civics Unplugged to me is a way to institutionalize the luck that I fell into, right? It's a way to give people a home, a community that sometimes high school is not, sometimes school is not, that tells them that they're worth it and puts them on the same pedestal that we put older generations that are changing the world, those leaders. And it gives them the same funding. It teaches them that social impact is a career choice, that could make them money. It's a passionate thing that makes them feel fulfilled as humans, and it really changed their lives. And so that's why I'm very passionate. But Baratunde is a recent board member, joinee of Civics Unplugged. We finally got him on the team, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on why Civics Unplugged and passing this torch, right, about what this session is. Why does it matter to you?
I like the irreverence of the organization. In terms of you're very direct. We found you through a woman named Sophie Regier who introduced us to Josh. And we wanted to bring Josh on to talk about Civics Unplugged. He is the CEO of the organization. You can find the letters on the website and LinkedIn. And so it makes sense to bring the CEO of an organization on your media platform to talk about the organization. And Josh was different right off the bat. He said, I got to bring one of the fellows with me. So it's going to be me and Zoe on the podcast. Josh was there, kind of just present, but she spoke more. And that spoke to me, and it spoke to us as actually walking the talk. Let the kids lead was, it's a really great phrase, but it's actually much harder to pull off. And we felt it in a moment of ego and attention and spotlight. He shared it. And so I was like, okay, this feels real. And then we had a chance to benefit from some Civics Unplugged folks to help us spread this How to Citizen message. Kind of became a part of the How to Citizen story. And I want to continue to spread what I've been the beneficiary of. When you said that somebody told you were worth it, I heard a lot of mm-hms and yes and amens maybe, right? Raise your hand if you've had that in your life, someone who told you were worth it. Raise your hand if you wanted that in your life, right? So that's everybody. And almost everyone raised their hands. And so I'm also doing this because I had a lot of that in my childhood. I had my mother, who went above and beyond the basics of evolution in terms of ushering me into this world. Like, she cleared the minimum viable product for mom service. That's the worst way to talk about motherhood. Don't ever do that. I was riffing and I retract that. And then I had a lot of organizations that I was a part of as a kid, a youth orchestra program, the Boy Scouts program, an Afrocentric rites of passage program. And they were all different structures which were handing over the torch. And they weren't like, this is a torch-bearing ceremony. They're like, no, we're going to go camping. And in the camping, you'll have a relationship. And in that relationship, you'll learn something and you'll tell a story and you'll be able to pass on something as you learn and grow and do the thing that you're doing. And then I had an adult job as a high schooler at the Washington Post, working in the mailroom. And I got to hang around college students who that job was really designed for. And so learning through exposure and just being able to answer the phones in a place like that and being trusted with that responsibility, it's like, okay, I'm worth it. I can do something with that. And so having the desire to not have that stop with me, this is a way to help, continue to pass that on more formally.
Yeah, I was in Boston recently, and there's this teen center run by the Boys and Girls Club in Mattapan in Boston.
Yeah.
And they had this documentary premiere from this 15-year-old documentarian who, it was his second documentary. His first one won like 3 statewide awards at 14. And he was showing it in the huge IMAX theater in the Boston Aquarium. And they were all dressed up in whatever the highest level of dress code, the bow tie, whole thing. Yeah. And they all came, and it was an amazing documentary, and it was all about the teen center and how these young kids that they come after school 3 o'clock and they leave at 10, and all they do is they're in this teen center and they do all these different activities, right? They're making music, they're rapping, they are doing like ping pong competitions, they are doing art, they are playing video games. They're like living in this ecosystem that is community, that's in-person community.
Yeah.
And what's really unfortunate now is that a lot of young people across the world don't have that in-person community, right? We've seen a huge decline in YMCAs, in like places to gather, period, that they can watch young people and mentor them. And we've replaced that with TikTok and Instagram and social media. And so, I've been asking the question a lot of the kids at Civics Unplugged have is like, how do we bring back those community spaces for young people to grow in? Because that's where they find the mentorship. That's where they find the trust. And when we replace it with a TikTok or an Instagram, we act like we're connecting them to more people and more knowledge, but what we're really doing is growing the space between every individual young person, every individual generation. And I just think that the more that we allow for that to happen without trying to bring back a sense of in-person connection for young people, the worse off we're going to be in terms of like what our leaders are going to look like in 20 years.
Agreed. There's you're bringing me back to the America Outdoors universe, which is also part of this universe, just to clarify. Young people, I've had a chance to spend more time with young people making this show than I had anticipated. There's a group in Idaho, a state that I was very underrating in my own assessment. It's so beautiful. And it's called New Roots. And they work with immigrant kids who are very new to the country, usually from places of strife. These are refugee children. So there's been war, there's been genocide in some cases. And they end up in Boise, Idaho, which is its own kind of torture. And great blessing. absolute blessing. I mean, it's the most beautiful thing. And I spent a whole day with these kids, and they're teenagers, and they're on Instagram, they're on TikTok, and they're on the trail. And they're so present with it. And once the initial wave of like, follow me, because that happens. They see I had a little blue check mark next. They want me to follow. So we play that game, and then we're on the move, and we're walking. And to watch these kids point things out and to connect with each other. I asked the kid, what do you like, about being outside? And he's like, I love the river. I love there's a lot of stress in my life. I came here, I didn't know the language, I didn't know anybody, I didn't see anybody who looked like me. I'm learning the language faster than my parents, so I basically work for them, translating and figuring out everything, and just float down the river. All that goes away. And these kids, they look and they're like, look at that, and they're pointing out how beautiful this country is. And they're kind of reminding those of us born here how beautiful this country is. And so that real space is important. And the other, you had mentioned, your own mental health challenges as a kid. And I spent some time with foster children recently who have gone through a lot. And there's a great program called the Mayfly Project. It's national. I've experienced them in Arkansas, but they go fly fishing with kids. And, these are kids for whom adults have not shown up. And these adults show up. And they've got a pairing, each one adult, one kid, and they go fishing. And the fly fishing is meditative, right? You just can't force it. Some sports you can move faster and kind of push it and maybe push your body or push whatever instrument you do. The fly fishing, you're just going to make it worse. So you just got to cast and pay attention and wait. And it was a kid who showed me how to fly fish. Lil Z, 12-year-old kid. And he's like, this is what you do, and this is how you do the thing. And I messed it up. And he's like, try it this way. It's a really joyful thing to be taught by someone 30 years younger than you. It's just he felt great because it worked. And I felt great because I love learning. It doesn't really matter the source. And then I caught 8 fish in a row, more than most of the other kids. And they got mad. And I was like, no, but I only did that because you taught me. These are your fish, And that's the kind of vibe and feel that I want this intergenerational thing to have.
Yeah. No, none of that was about passing the torch. None of that was about.
It wasn't a torch passing session.
That's what I'm saying. None of it was about let me teach you my wisdom, and then you teach me how to do these new things. It's it's just about hanging out. It's just about learning and mutual joy. I think that's what we try to do at Civics Unplugged, and what we try to take into our own lives is preserving that joy and creativity for young people as long as we possibly can. Because in that joy and creativity is where they will come up with these new ideas to change the world. And they won't need the torch to be passed. They won't need someone to tell them, this is my movement, now it's your turn to lead this forward, because they'll have come up with their own things, and they'll have done it knowing that they collaborated with older folks.
And that's the thing that, your name, our name is, it's got a lot of layers and possible contradictions in it, which is fun. Civics Unplugged, I think, unplugging the traditional top-down civics education program, but you're actually plugging people in as well. And so this is tethered, right? These young people are not just going to have these ideas in a vacuum. They're going to be connected to institutions to be able to follow through, hopefully differently and more effectively than if they just were isolated with the exact same idea.
Yeah. Do we want to open it up?
Let's open it up.
Yeah.
We're so close already.
I feel,
I remember 2 of your names. Thomas. Yeah, we have a microphone from Leah.
Cool.
And so what we're going to ask of you with the mic, you have to hold it oddly close.
Yeah.
This close?
There we go.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Ahoy.
We all have to say ahoy. So comments, additions, questions.
Sort of a comment question as I was listening, especially with a Dianne Feinstein comment. It got me thinking into what you're talking about at some level is succession planning, but on a societal level, not on a corporate level. And the problem with succession planning on the corporate level is the incumbent rarely wants to leave. And so, yeah, politics, whatever. And so how do you flip that? Because it really shouldn't be when the incumbent's ready, but when the protege is ready. And allowing it to release for that is, I think, really important. And when we don't do succession well, we get the HBO version, which we don't want. Mm-hmm. And so how would you, if you start to look at it from that perspective, how do you flip the dynamic where it's the protege that decides, not the incumbent?
First of all, Thomas, thank you that was a great contribution, not just a question. I love the analogy. I haven't watched Succession yet. I'm the one person. I know. It's in the queue. Get ready. Do you have something you want to say on this first?
You go first. I think
Okay.
you have the authority on this one, Matt.
I don't, but I will go first because you rejected my invitation. Mm-hmm. Lovingly. If we could design it so that it was a feature and almost an explicit understanding of taking the job, that you're measured on how you perform and your self-awareness that it's time to move on. Term limits is the hard version of that. Right? It's like you have 2 years and you got to re-up and reprove yourself, though you don't really in our political system because you get to pick your constituents. But in many different institutions, I could imagine a way that your review system starts to include questions that assess your self-awareness of succession. Are you preparing someone else? Have you brought on? Have you mentored? And as with everything we say we want in an institution, you're compensated on it, you're rated on it, so you're encouraged to do it a bit more. And we don't have obviously anything like that in like our Supreme Court. It's kind of the opposite. In our Senate, in most of our Washington national politics, it's very skewed because there's no incentive to leave. And so to my mind, it says, well, what's the incentive? And if you have reviewed or you get paid or you get some kind of demerit or positive credit for the behavior you want to see, and we make that transparent, then it should also affect the story of the job, the way the media talks about the thing. It's not just all the great stuff they did for the past 60 years. It's like, if there's no one in their wake, that's not sustainable. And so you're increasing systemic risk as well. And there's your greatness and your solo performance becomes risk to the people you're supposed to serve. And it's not a personal thing. It's just like, we got to think about that. I have to think about that. And so there's an opportunity for us all to try to extend ourselves. And then the last thing that occurs to me in the moment is, how do you make it still play to the ego of the person? Because there's so much ego wrapped up in I want my legacy. And so you use words like legacy. Because what can also happen, and I don't know Feinstein personally or her situation really at all. So she's an avatar for a larger thing. That your legacy, you will be remembered for the failure to sustain the good work you invested in if you don't also invest in succession. And the history books, especially if you're seeking that level of publicity, you're not doing it for now. You're doing it for later. You want somebody to write about you. You want to be in Wikipedia, like real, good version, every editor agreeing. And to have that happen, you've got to plan for the future too, which means you've got to actually step back at some point and not make it about you anymore.
The only other thing I'll add is that it's also, to plan for succession is to plan for retention. I think a lot of young people now jump from job to job, career to career all the time. And that's because they want to have more agency. They want to do their own thing. They want to be creative in their roles. And the problem with a lot of large corporations, but I think everywhere, is that young people and people below the CEO or whatever, never have the opportunity to build their own thing internally, right? And so if you give younger folks the opportunity to create internally, to use the platform that you as the CEO have built to build the V2 or build their thing, you improve how many people stay inside your ecosystem from a young age, right? Because they're the CEO of their own wing. And then you know when they're ready because their business unit will be eating yours. Or they will be, if we're going the capitalism structure, they will kind of be making more money than you, and you can quantifiably say, like, okay, you're ready to take over the company. It's something that I don't think happens often, and that's why a lot of people jump ship and try to start their own thing. And when they jump ship and start their own thing, it's unfortunate because they don't have a community. Being a founder is really lonely. And so what if you can give people the joy and the creativity of being a founder within your ecosystem, within your company, you retain those amazing people, and then eventually, once they are the CEOs and they're winning, then you don't really have to decide to step down or not because the decision will have been made for you.
So when I see a lot of hands, I love it. Did anyone want to add to that? Any quick notes to add to that answer? Right, that was a great prompt, and right here, yes. Oh no.
Oh.
Okay. Then go for it. Say your name. Close mic. Awkwardly close.
Hello. Whoa, this is kind of awkward. I feel like an MC right now with the can. Anyway, Reggie, DC based. Two things. One, as a recovering civics, DC in the house, right?
Chocolate City in the house.
What's up, go-go? As a recovering and former civics teacher, however I can be helpful to y'all, like, let me know. Right,
Appreciate
however
it.
I can be a steward to your organization, let me know. I taught civics and was called like the whisperer because of my ability to just connect and be of service. So put that out there as a statement.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. The term that comes to mind, and both of y'all alluded to this, is stewardship. Right, so that's not passing the torch, it's not succession planning, it's stewardship. And in a capitalistic model, which even nonprofits are predicated upon, it's so individualistic that we don't view each other as a community. Right, so my job should be to empower you as I'm leading. I'll give you a quick example, then I'll shut up. But like, I'm a yoga meditation teacher. Next week, this time, the first of its kind ever black male healing retreat is taking place at Kripalu, this fancy ass place in Western Massachusetts.
I want to go.
Yeah. Yeah, so dope. Like the fact that they gave me the keys to the kingdom, like, anyway. But 47 years old, the first thing I did was call a teacher who was 32. And was like, yo, I ain't gonna be here forever, but I want you to have access to this network now. And so as a leader, the first thing I did was think in stewardship. Like, how can my success be of benefit to all? Right, so then called this young brother, and he was like, really? I'm like, just say yes, dog. And like, I need to get back to them. But then the second call I made was to a teacher who was 65. Right, so we have a roster of black male teachers, 47, 32, and 65, teaching everybody, but in that communitarian way, not just, hey, it's Reggie's thing. My name is barely mentioned in the thing because I'm of service to the whole thing. So like, when we think about this, it's more stewardship and less ego. That's all I got.
Yes. Yes. I knew I liked you. We just met earlier on the joint, but you're my DC brother. I'm from DC as well. So we speak many same languages, and I love the multi-generational Black Men Healing Joint. I wish I could make it. Stewardship is great. And I think when it comes to the political power especially, it's not that person's power to begin with, right? It's the people's power. And so you're in a position to be a focal point for it and a key facilitator of it, but steward is a really great word. Thank you for that.
We're going to do another retreat, so don't worry.
Oh, yeah, I'll let you work out the kinks. Yeah, I'll get the
next one.
Version 2.0. Okay, so let me try to bring some order to this. Oh, do you want to add something on that?
No, I was just pointing that way, so you bring the order.
We have here. I saw you earlier. Okay, so let's go 1, 2, 3.
And then 4 back there. There you go.
4,
Yeah.
5. We'll try to get to 5. We have 10 minutes, so
We'll go quick.
short.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ahoy.
Ahoy.
Boy,
I'm not from DC, but I live in DC. Woo-hoo.
Welcome.
I feel left out.
I mean, very inspirational conversation. 2 things. I have small daughters who, anyone who has kids will learn quickly that your ego is smashed at about age 4 when you see them talk back, and you have 2 options. One is to stop them, which is to shut them up, and the other is to let them go. And there's that fine line between punishment and discipline. And kids need structure and discipline, but if you steal their agency at a young age, which is very tempting because you just need to just get in the car, get to school, do this, do that. You silence them. And I think that silencing happens sometimes inadvertently. It doesn't have to be in the foster care system. It doesn't have to be an abusive household. It happens as a matter of course, just kind of trying to have order in your household. But you have to be very conscious of when you're doing it. And ego, I think, is a key word. You can always make excuses and say, it's because we're busy, it's because I need to run the house. But actually, a lot of the times you cross into, I don't want someone challenging me. And it's difficult. It's a very big learning experience as a mother. But something that you said, which I think is critical, that I worry about for my kids is there hope to bring people back into the present? I'm not on TikTok. I barely look at Instagram. I mean, I'm old school like that, but when I see the direction that young people are going in, that disconnect feels almost inevitable as something that's only going to grow. Do you see hope to bring people back into the present, especially when you think about how the algorithms are designed? They're designed to suck you in, and it's a little bit of a rabbit hole.
She was looking only at you.
I'm sorry.
I appreciate the simplicity. Go for it. And thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that, first of all, on the note of parenting, I've seen some parenting styles that are so pro-agency for young children, and the love that those children have and the consciousness and the intelligence that they grow at such a young age is beautiful, and so I commend you for thinking that way. I hope I can remember that when I eventually have kids. The second thing on hope, yes, 100%. The pragmatic hope is that there are so many bills moving through Congress right now to stop social media companies from destroying our youth, right? You know, it is a 4-year-old child, a 5-year-old kid against an MIT PhD that is building these algorithms. Thousands of MIT PhDs versus one 5-year-old kid. And the fact that, you know, we've come this long without doing anything about it is kind of scary, but I think we are. There's a historic number of bills trying to solve that problem, and a lot of young people are leading the charge and designing alongside legislators from a state-by-state level. There's the age-appropriate design code that's passed in 3 states. California is one of them, so I would check that out, and then nationally as well. That gives me a lot of hope, because I think that adults are realizing the problem. The second thing that gives me a lot of hope is the fact that younger kids are starting to create these in-person communities themselves. They're starting to understand and realize the lack that they have, and they're not waiting to be given the community or given the space. They're doing it by themselves. They're organizing meetups. They're trying to create spaces. They're playing more music outside. They're like, there's this term on the internet called saying touch grass. I don't know if anyone knows, but it's like you say it and you're like, you need to go outside. Like, you need to get off the internet. You need to go outside. You need to ground yourself.
Out.
Like, get out. And I think that's symbolic of the fact that young people have also woken up to this, right? It's not like everybody's under a trance. We're all just addicted to the internet, but we know it. And so therefore we're going to fix it. So I'm very hopeful.
Yes. Thank you. Great question, great answer. Quick plug, tomorrow there's a session run by Dr. Sam Rader, which really dives into some tools for parenting is one way to interpret it. It's called source code, and the coping styles that we deal with in our early childhood, that we inherit in early childhood to manage, that we can kind of dissolve and grow out of. And the way you described your own parenting made me think that might resonate with you. I won't speak more because we have 5 minutes. So you have the mic, thank goodness.
Yes.
Name.
Hi, my name is Geneva. My question is about your fellows and this program. What strategies do you give to them to push back on people being dismissive of their participation? I'm halfway through my second term on city council in my little ski town, and oh, thanks. I know Skippy's done that as well. And I got elected when I was 30, and I look really young, and I was called a baby, new here, all of this stuff, and my inclination is to, argue, be passionate, be fiery, and that works sometimes and not other times. So how do you deal with the gatekeeping that is happening, even when people agree to have a fellow as a part of their program or whatever it is?
How you deal with that? Keep hitting him with the questions. This is
Man,
great for
yeah, this is. Two things. One of them is we try to prepare them before they go into those spaces. We're like, there will be people that will baby you. There will be people that will dismiss everything you say, no matter how intelligent it is. And the unfortunate fact is that you can spend all the energy in the world trying to convince that group of people, or you can build a stronger coalition of people that believe in you. And so sometimes that works. Sometimes we have a couple kids that are, one of our fellows is on the California State Board of Education. And so one of the things we talk about with her is like, how do you build mentors that believe in you, that have a real, personal, individual equity in your success, and how do they open the door for you, right? You need an ally. You cannot do it by yourself. You cannot do it single generation. You have to find an ally. So that's one strategy. And the second strategy we teach is just to be better. Think smarter.
Upgrade yourself.
Yeah, upgrade yourself. No, seriously, I think...
You don't have that new firmware? You got to get that.
Young people, there are so many like tropes and stereotypes that young leaders fall into. I'm sure you know what they are, I know what they are, and it's like being very conscious that you can't mess up, and it's so much more stress. But when you're in a space that you shouldn't be in, and this goes for everything, you have to hold yourself at a higher regard. You have to work harder. You have to throw some elbows, and we try to prepare them and give them enough confidence in themselves.
Thanasi sounds like my mama. Damn.
Sorry.
Work twice as hard to get half as far. That's every black parent ever.
Yeah. You're welcome.
The verbal elbows.
Yes, verbal elbows. All right. Lightning round.
Beautiful. Ahoy, I'm Skippy.
Ahoy.
This one be for him, please.
It's not really.
Damn.
I love you. I love
so much wisdom, brother. Thank you.
Thanks.
Truly. I knew it was coming from you, but I mean, really beautiful.
I am honored to share this stage with you.
What I heard implicit in a lot of your comments about where we are, where we need to shift to, the idea of passing the torch is implicitly separation, right? And moving from a place of leading from fear to a place of real inclusion and valuing everything. Under that is a lot of deep mindset work. And I've been in enough of these rooms to know that even the ones that present as open-minded, progressive, use your word, are either not there or resistant. It sounds like both of you, you're both in the question now, have found a lot of those rooms. And I wonder if you're just choosing the rooms that are already in that place, or if you've found effective means to cultivate that within rooms that are resistant to it.
I'm going to tell a story that I probably shouldn't tell.
Yes.
There was an organization that we worked with early at Civics Unplugged who had billions of dollars of funding and wanted our help building their youth program. And they asked our fellows to participate. They asked to co-create it. They made all these promises. They were like, you guys model intergenerational co-creation, and we want to do it on a bigger scale. And we were like, hell yeah, because it's not a competition. We're all making the world a better place. Like, hell yeah, if you're going to do our program better, great. They brought us in. They called all our fellows interns. They did not pay them. They repeatedly denied their request, the fellows' request, to change things in the program that were fundamentally wrong about how you empower young people. And they were just horrible partners. And so, after a year of trying to meet with them, and they kept shunting us off after all our fellows quit, they voted to stop the partnership collectively. Civics Unplugged is run as a democracy, so all the fellows vote on what we do. So they voted to end the partnership. Josh commented on their Instagram, and that's how we got their attention. And we jump on a meeting, and I think it was leadership team to leadership team. It was being really honest. And the only reason we were able to get that meeting, and I was able to say, you called me an intern, and I dropped out of college because you all gave Civics Unplugged the ability to exist. And I dropped out of college to help you. That was one of the reasons. And then you called me an intern and totally dismissed us. The only reason I was able to give them that feedback was because Josh was willing to put his reputation out there, right? And adult to adult, not in the same room, but adult to adult, open that door. And when it comes to the situations that you have, I don't think you need to have someone in the room, particularly, that is an ally, but you need to have someone of the same level on your side, especially when it comes to generation. You need to have an adult that's willing to kick down the door as the adult and put themselves first so that you can make the comment. And honestly, I don't think they took the feedback, but it was good that we gave it to them. So yeah, caveat on that.
And it made for a great story here today. And I think that story is also helpful to come back to where we started. It demonstrates in a real way to those fellows their worth.
Yeah.
Whether that other partner changes actually isn't the point. The fact that the CEO stood for them publicly in a room, that's really what matters. And that's how you build that intergenerational trust, and they're going to be better because of it. Thanasi Dilos, thank you so much. Been good talking with you, brother.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
I'm Baratunde. We will see you on this boat. Ahoy.
Ahoy.